The Leprechaun is right up there with Freddy and Chucky in the personality department. He's a wisecracking, devilish little booger with a cinematic hook. For some reason, the Leprechaun series didn't quite catch on. Maybe it's because he spent a little too much time in the hood. The first movie was released by Trimark in 1993 and features Jennifer Aniston in her first major film role. How do we keep running into these future celebrities? These aren't like Clu Gallagher or Bruce Campbell. These are actors who literally started small and are now some of the biggest names in Hollywood. You know what would really be funny? I always wanted to run into Jennifer Aniston and be like, "Hey, you're that girl from Leprechaun." You probably couldn't be any more insulting to an actress's career. And I'm sure she hears that all the time. This came out a year before Friends. What, no Rachel hairdo? It's also got Mark Holton playing a mentally challenged guy named Ozzy. You know what else he was in?
It's not for sale, Francis.
That's right, he was Francis from Pee-wee's Big Adventure. So I guess his career went in the opposite direction. Let's not forget the star of the film, Warwick Davis, who of course plays the Leprechaun.
I'm the Leprechaun!
Cool it, okay?
And who said little people don't get good roles in movies? To be fair, Warwick's energetic performance is hilarious, and had me cracking up the whole time. He's not scary at all, but he loves to taunt his victims, and his rhymes are hysterical.
This old Lep, he played one, he played pogo on his lawn.
Of course, they have to make a few Lucky Charms references, but how could they not? With a movie called Leprechaun, it's almost not an option. At the beginning of the movie, old Dan O'Grady has found the Leprechaun's pot of gold, and now the Leprechaun is pursuing him, trying to get it back. Geez, what an Indian giver. The legend says that if you find a leprechaun at the end of the rainbow, you get his pot of gold. It's Irish law or something. I wonder what kind of neighborhoods this guy was creeping around in to land this leprechaun. No, stop. We'll get to that one eventually, I'm sure. O'Grady uses a 4-leaf clover to trap the leprechaun in a crate, but he has a stroke before he can actually finish him off. 10 years later, Jennifer Aniston and her dad are moving from LA to the O'Grady farmhouse. Why? What the hell was here that wasn't in LA?
Never judge a book by its cover, honey.
Dad, this book doesn't even have a cover.
The movie never addresses this. Should we care? Of course not. It's your typical horror movie setting. A barn in the middle of nowhere. Right off the bat, the Aniston character, named Tori Redding, is a spoiled city girl who hates old rickety farmhouses and won't stop complaining about it until the obligatory hunky, muscle-strewn guy shows up to paint the house. Enter Nathan, your typical jock and the male hero of the film, who struts around like he's got rocks embedded in his pants. Even after getting caught in a bear trap, he's still able to limp around and try to hunt down the leprechaun. Nathan's a douchebag. I don't mean he's an unlikable character, he's okay, but he's cocky, and he's the anchor that gets Tori to stay throughout the whole ordeal. You do realize that if you weren't led on by his tight muscles and absent personality, you could have avoided this whole thing, right? Nathan's younger brother Alex and his challenged friend Ozzy work with him, and they're always getting sidetracked. It turns out that Ozzy has quite the imagination. He's always talking about comics or monsters, and no one ever takes him seriously.
Just got a call from Ozzy, says the leprechaun is attacking. What was it last week? It was UFOs? No, it was Bigfoot.
These two have pretty good chemistry, and they make Ozzy pretty sympathetic anyways, so all in all, he rounds out a pretty solid cast. Of course, Ozzy screws it all up when he stumbles into the leprechaun's crate, unleashing the leprechaun, who's now free to run around in search of his gold, which Ozzy and Alex found earlier. What follows is an hour of gruesome slapstick. That's all it is. The leprechaun doesn't even need a reason to kill people. He kills this shop owner with a pogo stick just because he had possession of one of his coins. It was an accident because he was just checking its value for Alex, but that doesn't matter. The leprechaun simply loves to roam free, and he loves to kill people. He's like a gremlin with clothes and an Irish accent. Eventually, Tori finds out about the bag of gold and gives it back to the leprechaun, who actually sits down and counts it all, only to find out that he's still missing one coin. Maybe he's a Jewish leprechaun. When he continues to attack everyone, Tori goes to find O'Grady, who now resides in a nursing home. He tells her that the only way to kill the leprechaun is by touching him with a 4-leaf clover, which, as always, is easier said than done. To keep the leprechaun at bay, Alex and Nathan throw shoes at him, which preoccupy him for a while because he's a shoe polisher by trade. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Imagine if I was after you because you stole my collection of Super Nintendo games. In order to slow me down, you throw me a meat slicer and some deli meat because I work in a deli. It's freaking stupid. Actually, come to think of it, I think I just came up with the idea for my next short film. In a last-ditch effort, they find the 4-leaf clover and Alex delivers the most awesome line in the movie.
Fuck you, Lucky Charms.
This is a fun little flick. What I really like is how they're able to pull you in by using the typical horror camera angles, POV shots, and Dutch angles. But when the Leprechaun shows up, he ends up being hilarious. Maybe that was why people were turned off by him. If you remember the original Child's Play, Chucky started out as a pretty serious little creep, who became more comical when the sequel started coming out. The same goes for Freddy Krueger in the original Nightmare on Elm Street. But here, Warwick Davis just makes you laugh from the opening scene, and he keeps up the charade till the very end. With a concept like Leprechaun, how do you go about making a serious horror film? It's like if Lucky the Leprechaun suddenly went apeshit and started killing random bystanders. That's a chilling thought, and more disturbing than this movie actually turned out to be. I guess if the death sequences were more elaborate, maybe they could have gotten away with it, but even those are pretty fun to watch. It's an entertaining little schlock fest, almost on the same level as Killer Clowns. Endlessly cheesy, but surprisingly enjoyable.